I got so used to performing under pressure and putting in, fires out, that when they were happening in the business, like, okay, this is what work feels to me. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, just putting stuff out left and right. I got to a point of like, man, like, is this it? Am I gonna work the next 50 years or be the next 50 years of my life and then operate like this? Like, man, I don't want that. So there had to be something different. It's not sustainable, right? Like, we can continue to operate through life just putting out emergencies without doing future pacing on the business, the life that we want to create ourselves, without understanding ourselves. I mean, I think that it really comes down to that.
Well, I am excited to chat with Rafael today. We met a while back. I was on his show, and some things that we've both done, which is built brands, built businesses, navigated the family life. And I wanted to have a real conversation with him about what that journey looked like, because it's oftentimes we have to face our inner demons to build the external wins we want. So I know you're a man of discipline and principles, and I wanted to start with, this is a deep question, but I wanted to start with, you believe hustle is a season, not a business strategy. And I want to
100%.
know how you arrived at that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, going straight for the meat and potatoes. I like it. Well, first off, thank you for having me on, Staci. It's an honor to be here. And yeah, I mean, I think good open conversations about the actual journey and what happens, on behind the curtain is always a good thing in terms of awareness, right? For the people who are hopping on the entrepreneurship train or want to bet on themselves. So, with that being said, actually, I got it from a mentor of mine. So his thing was, it's hustle is a season, right? I added it's not a business strategy, because I'm very strategic when it comes to operations and how I build automations and stuff like that in the business. But the premise of that thought process is pulling myself away from it. I did get burned out when I was in my mid-20s. This is going through my first business at the time. So it was a very dark spot. I had no drive, no spark, right? So that whole entrepreneur dream that we hold on to as we were building, it just kind of dimmed. It didn't go away, but it dimmed. Like the light went all the way down. And I was burned out. I didn't want to show up to work, and it's not like me, right? So it was like, man, I've been hustling and breaking through things with my forehead practically up to this point. I have to do something about it. So the hustle, although it's a great tool in terms of tenacity, and we need it, right? As entrepreneurs, we need to have that I'm going to die on the treadmill type of instinct, but it's not sustainable. So we also have to understand that it's not sustainable. It's not the tendency to glorify that type of behavior over years is it's going to take us to a point where we either cap out and can't move upwards anymore because of the bandwidth, or we get burned out and then just simmer away. So that's where that thought process kind of came by.
Yeah. When I saw that statement from you, I didn't segment it into two things. So we do need hustle for a season. As entrepreneurs, we need to be able to kick it into second gear, third gear, and go. And I'm curious, how did you recover your spark?
Good question. I think that's really what my personal growth journey started. The personal development, that's where it hit. I was not a reader. I was not, I always had that figure it out type of mentality. So I would just see a problem, then just kind of break it, reverse engineer and break it down, and then figure it out, right? Yeah. And then here, for the first time, I got to a point where I couldn't fix it with nuts and bolts. I couldn't do a tweak in the business and fix the issue. It was internal. So that's where meditation came in. That's where, self-awareness came in. That's where understanding my inner demons, right? And then the second, understanding what my truth is came in. Right. So it took a lot of breaking through certain paradigms that I had built up to that point, and really like getting to know myself. So that's what kind of started pulling me out of that funk and into that space. Like, man, I'm doing so many things, but 90% of it is not in alignment with the life that I want to create, or the person that I want to become, I intend to become, right? So I was operating on pure hustle and just opportunity and circumstances, as opposed to the intentional path of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we were to dive deeper into the demons you had to slay, because I think that is what really wins in business, is you can build a 6-7 figure business and not have to deal with your demons. But
Yeah.
when you're trying to go to multi-7, hit 8, 9, you are going to face some real self-talk conversations that are really, they're tough. And I'm curious, like, how first you have the grit and courage and bravery to like sit with it, but then what were some, maybe your top paradigm that you had to shift in order to move the needle?
So it was, I mean, to me, it was a matter of I feel like at that point of survival, really. Like I got to a point of like, man, like, is this it?
Yeah.
Is this what I'm like? Am I gonna work the next 50 years, or be the next 50 years of my life, and then operate like this? Like,
Yeah.
man, I don't want that. So there had to be something different. I mean, I started devouring books, personal growth seminars. That's where I got exposed to them. Cliche type of stuff, right? But like, one of the first ones that just made a dent was Tony Robbins, UPW, and Unleash the Power Within. So it's just exposure to different perspectives on how to see the same stuff, but see it from a different angle. And it just started clicking. I feel like at that point I was under so much, I'll call it, pain, that I was receptive.
Yeah.
I was open to a solution. When if you would have talked to me maybe 2 years prior, when I was hammering things out and just kind of boom boom in my element, then growing the business nuts and bolts, and very very on the tasky side of things, as opposed to the internal connection.
Yeah.
The same advice wouldn't have made any difference. So
Right.
so I think it became a matter of being ready, because of the situation that I put myself in. So
Yeah. Like, I'm thinking, like, of all the people that I coach in different entrepreneur groups and friends that I have, I feel like I could read all the books. I grew up in personal development. So 2004, I went to Jim Rohn. That was my very first personal development event. And then it was 20 years of devouring books and doing things. And it's
yeah,
what you're saying, the teacher appears when the student is ready.
yeah,
You have to go through a series of really hard knocks. And then it's like, okay, I'm done beating my head against a brick wall. I'm actually ready for a different way.
yeah,
So if we were to like fast forward, so you have you're building your first business, you burn out, you have no spark, no drive, you get into personal development, you reinvent yourself in a way. Put on that.
I feel like I found myself again.
Mm,
So I refound myself. But yeah, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. But
no,
yeah,
and
I'll dive into it.
what did you find when you found yourself?
So and on the podcast, one of the things that I like to ask is, if you were 17 years old and ran into your 17-year-old self, right? What piece of advice would you give that kid?
Yeah.
The reason I ask for that is because when I was 17, that spark was all the way out. All the way up, right? It's like I know everything. I'm going to conquer the world. There wasn't anything that you could tell me that would put me down on how hungry I was about life, right?
Yeah.
So 17, and then life started happening and whatnot. I became a firefighter at 19, and then started getting exposed to different things, right?
Yeah.
So the dream life, or the dream habits that I had back then, they kind of peaked at 17. And then I started getting, okay, I got to pay rent. I got to, make money for this. And then, the dream stuff starts to kind of, lose power, right? Or intensity. At least it did for me. And then I got pulled into the raw of the world, right? Through emergency situations and responding and all that. So you start to see all these things that, like, man, they make you a realist, when my tendency was to be an optimist and a dreamer. And I feel like I did that. I sustained that for such a long period of time, that dream and that idealist mentality that I had got dimmed down, right? So the ability to kind of dream got forgotten there for a second. And when I went through personal growth, I mean, I started just first understanding where my paradigms were coming from, right? Like, and I started remembering who I was back then. It's like, man, what happened to that kid? What happened there? And through dynamics and all that stuff, I just, little by little, I started just kind of picking back pieces and putting that dude together.
Yeah.
So up until now, I always say, like, I'm gonna be 90 years old, but die 17. So it's you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So
Every time in my business or life when you hit that crisis, that hard thing, that hurdle that you feel like you can't navigate,
yeah,
I feel like the dream is the thing. Your why is the thing. The people you're doing it for is the thing that has to pull you through, because the inner world at that time in that crisis is self-absorbed in a sense. Not in a
yeah,
negative way, but it's triage. And you're a
right,
firefighter. So you're in that moment that it's like all faculties are in the urgent. And
yeah,
I'm sure your firefighting experience really helped you with this, because you're in the urgent, but you want to get out of the urgent as quickly as possible.
yeah.
So for you, how do you integrate that in your business?
Well, I mean, I think and you're right, it played right into my business habits, because I started taking care of the now, the now.
Yeah.
What's the problem right now, right? And you're absolutely right. Like, one of the first things that we would do on a scene would be triage, right? We come in and then triage the patient, prioritize like the need for whatever the emergency was, and putting that out. So I
Mm-hmm.
got into this habit of putting emergencies out. I did the same thing in the business, so I wasn't really for my forethought wasn't really on the future of the business. Where do I
Mm-hmm.
want to be in 5 years? What do I want to
Mm-hmm.
be in 3 years? What do I need to do to get there and kind of future pace it? I was
Yeah.
always doing, I was like, all right, cool. Am I going to make payroll this week? Let's put that emergency out. So I was operating under that modality. And I think that's what put me in that state where I couldn't extract myself out of the business, because everything, I got so used to performing under pressure and putting in, fires out, that when they were happening in the business, like, okay, this is what work feels to me. This is what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be doing, just putting stuff out left and right. But the reality is that it's not sustainable, right? Like, we can continue to operate through life just putting out emergencies without doing future pacing on the business, the life that we want to create ourselves, without understanding ourselves. I mean, I think that it really comes down to that.
Yeah.
So that led to that stage, which absolutely broke me down.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of started collect the pieces and then build some better pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and turn into the following stage of my life. So I mean,
Yeah.
it was a scary, beautiful phase to go through, I think.
It's like a rebirth.
It is. It truly is. It truly is. And like, one of the biggest things I feel like that I got after that was the awareness of standing in your truth. Like, what does that even mean, right? Like, well, what's your truth?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a very deep question. If you're in the personal growth space, you've thought about it a few times, and you have to sit with that sometimes for years, right,
Mm-hmm.
to understand what you're really tapped into. And to me, it like everything I do now empowers entrepreneurship. Everything I do in all my businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from the moment I wake to when I go to bed, I know that everything I'm doing, from the coaching to the brokerage, through the real estate investment, all in my team and all that stuff, like, it's always empowering that entrepreneur, vision, right? I think we all have a really cool story to tell. We all have X factors and talents and stuff like that. So if throughout the day I can empower somebody else, not just motivate, right? Motivation kind of, you've heard
Mm-hmm.
it a thousand times, it goes away real quick. But when you truly empower somebody to perform and just draw out and operate from their space of genius, right, their zone of genius, I think things change for that person, and that became a purpose to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's like, the money is really cool, but it's a byproduct of me empowering everybody that comes across my way. And that came about because of that situation that I went through, which, I mean,
Yeah.
lasted months. It was
Yeah.
it was rough.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to one thing you said about how you were so accustomed to putting out fires. And then that's where you got your worth from.
Yeah,
And I have seen this so many times where when a entrepreneur or a founder is making the transition from being in their business, putting out the fires, to being on their business,
yeah,
their feeling of significance tanks if
yeah.
it's not redirected. And so what were some self-honoring things that you did to show you, to retell yourself that you have value and significance, even if you're not performing under pressure all the time?
I started liking myself again.
Mm.
I started liking myself, really liking myself, and I mean, not from a a space of self indulgence or anything. It's just, man, okay, cool. This is the person that I'm forgetting about. I went back to playing guitar and the music stuff, and I kind of I let go off the gas on a lot of things that I enjoyed doing,
Yeah.
and I went back to playing with life. So I what I did is the life that I was going through in the business space, right?
Mhm.
That gave me a fix, gave me a sense of worth and significance.
Yeah.
So I had to remember, what did I enjoy or liked more than that fix that I was getting from work.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, but when there wasn't something to fix, I felt like, man, there's something off.
Yeah.
Like, there, you know what I mean. So almost I was waiting for something to break for me to come in and fix it, and then, okay, cool. But
Yeah.
then I started just going back to me, and I think it's one of the most unselfish things we can do, to actually
Mhm.
be selfish a little bit. And the reason I say that is because when we take care of ourselves, and I'm in a state of joy, right? I'm enjoying the path that I'm walking. I'm enjoying the people around me. I enjoy myself. I have internal happiness, right? It's contagious.
Yes.
I can give joy,
Yeah.
but we can't give something that we don't have. We can't give somebody water if our cup of water is empty.
Yeah.
So when I say being selfish, is fill your own cup, and after your cup is full, I mean, everything becomes a byproduct, right,
Mhm.
of you standing in your peace and your truth and holding your space.
Mhm.
And I started to get more and more into that, and almost became a, once you find it, it's like a drug. I've never done drugs, but I'm assuming it's like like once you find it, it's like, man, I want more of this. This is really cool stuff, and that you can create from that space of beingness, as opposed to, like, man, hammering through things with your forehead. And I think that's what happened. That really was the switch, the pivot that made it all stick. I found myself, and then I found myself in a cool spot after all
Mhm.
this work, and it's like, I want more of that. So how can I explode this, as opposed to all the pain and struggle and the thing, the stuff that I was going through mentally, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taking it a little bit off of you, but just in general for entrepreneurs and humans, do you think that in order to have that reintegration and tell yourself that you like yourself again and commit to that, pursuing self joy, do you think that humans have to hit that enough is enough moment? Like, I'm not going to operate like this anymore?
I've seen it in cases when you see somebody who's been a chain smoker their entire life, and they just, okay, I'm gonna stop smoking. They throw the cigarette away. That's
Yeah,
kind of like the exception, not the norm.
you're right.
Most people leave it when they get sick. I feel it's kind of like that. For me, I had to go through a stage of pain to actually stick with it.
Yeah,
It wasn't one of those things where okay, cool, I read a book, and I got the awareness. Now I'm gonna start doing this stuff. I'm
right,
gonna be consistent with it
right,
and doing the actual work.
right.
And so I think that definitely going through a state of crisis is going to help you, whether that's a separation, it's illness, it's something else, right? There's going to be a shift, a pattern interrupt of whatever life
Mhm.
you're living, that's going to make you stick with it, because that pain becomes a lot bigger than the pleasure of just sitting where you're at.
Mhm.
So I think it definitely helps.
Yeah.
And but I also think it's doable. Like, I think if somebody comes to a realization, it was like, man, I'm not in pain, I'm not hurting, but I know there's more to it. Somebody can commit and start going through the work, and what you'll find on the other side. I mean, we see it all the time with people who actually start meditating, start looking inwards, and we see that shift. It when you fall in love with yourself,
Mhm.
and I mean, I think the ceiling just goes away.
Mhm. As a leader, because you have team,
Yeah.
even if this could be for kids too, but I feel like sometimes we want to almost gift consciousness. Like, I'm going to gift you this process. I'm going to gift you efficiency. I'm going to gift you knowledge so
Mm,
you don't have to
yeah.
endure the pain of what I already know. And sometimes I feel like I've robbed people of the character development that the journey provides.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, what your journey has been with that. Like, how much do you give somebody the answer, and how do you let them wrestle with it?
I would absolutely empty my cup.
Yeah.
I would just, like, and throw the
Yeah.
cup away. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I was doing. And it's really not a good thing. I mean, you get, like, almost cynical about the people that come to you for help after a while. So, I mean, I've always been a provider, a helper, right? I always want to fix stuff and make things better. I don't know. I feel like our mission here is to leave the world in better shape than when we found it, right? Whatever that means. If it's in your bubble, it's in your bubble. It's you're planting seeds of improvement everywhere. With that being said, I think going through it, especially when I was finding myself and my journey, and it became a thing that's like, bro, let's sit down because I feel like I got something that's gonna help you, but I hadn't even helped myself yet. So I mean, I knew the theory of it,
Yeah.
not the practical application of it. So I mean, I did a lot of just pouring and emptying the cup, and then when people wouldn't just take action because they're not ready, it's not their time, whatever, I would get pissed off. I
Yes.
was like, I'm not wasting my time with that person anymore, and then just walk away.
Yeah.
So it did make me cynical, but I was pouring a lot into just the wrong spaces, right? So it becomes one of those things where the energy is there, energy flows, right? But there has to be a recipient on the other side of that's allowing that energy to continue flowing. So some people are not ready for it. So we don't, like, this type of conversation is not a common chat, right? Unless you're in that specific circle, and then we have groups for this kind of stuff, and our own little tribes and people that we have trust with. But I think when people are not in alignment with it yet, the natural tendency is to just dismiss it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but I there was a lot of pouring and emptying the cup, and then there I was, just coming back from that from that moment.
I wonder how much entrepreneurship is like that, because as an entrepreneur, you're intentionally trying to solve problems. Like, that's
Yeah,
the essence of entrepreneurship. So if you see a problem that you think that you have a solution for, it's natural that you're going to want to present the solution to the person that's suffering.
yeah,
And but the person who's suffering has to understand and be ready, and the student will appear when they're ready. And sometimes I have done the same thing. Have you seen the drama triangle,
no,
or have
no,
you heard above the line, below the line?
yeah, okay, yeah, that I'm
Okay, it's
familiar with.
similar. It's from that same, like, 50, I think it's 15 conscious leadership tips or something like that book. But it talks about the drama triangle, and how you have a persecutor, a rescuer, and a victim,
Yeah,
and how all of that's not productive. You want somebody who's a coach and a challenger and a creator. So you move from the drama triangle to above the line, where you're coaching, you're creating, and all of that. But I do think, to resonate with you, I also was rescuer. I'm like,
yeah,
I don't want you in pain. I feel like I can solve it. I'm going to come do it for you. And I was robbing them of being a hero in their own journey.
yeah.
And I don't think people liked me for it. I think they probably disliked me for it, and I didn't even know why. I'm like, this is so
Isn't that crazy?
helpful.
Yeah, I can absolutely I mean, connect with that. And I mean, I think it's very true, right? Like, we have to go through our own path. We're not professors at life, right? We're really technicians, because we're
Yeah,
working through it on a daily basis and understanding us along the way. So what worked for us, what worked for us may not work exactly the same way for somebody else, given
yeah.
perspective, behavioral tendencies, and just overall psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Now we do have certain patterns, right? You have the growth mentality, you have the victim mentality, and, like, there's certain things that we have to get out of the way before we get to this pace of fixing and rearranging and rediscovering stuff. I mean, there's clearing that has to happen. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I found out from a personal standpoint, when I was going through it and getting into it. It was like, there was things that people would like, especially going through, like, the trainings and the events and that sort of thing. Is like, man, how come that's landing so hard with most people in this room, and to me, like, it doesn't matter, like, I'm not
Yeah.
even flinching. But
Yeah.
there was other stuff. It was like, oh, that landed deep, and like,
Yeah.
the next person next to me wouldn't care. So it's just goes to show, right, that we have different roadmaps to like
Mhm.
understanding ourselves as we go through the process. And when we, especially in the mindset side, when I want to, like, shove my blueprint down somebody else's throat, it's like, it doesn't always pan out the way that it's like, oh, I thought it was going to go different. Sorry.
I
I
feel like
I
my
could have sworn you were going to give me a hug after this.
I know. Have
Yeah.
you found that, like, in your personal relationships also?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's and it's interesting because especially when you get into that growth phase and you start to improve, the conversations change. So, all of a sudden the stuff that used to be in alignment, it's like it's not a topic of interest anymore. It's
Right.
like, okay, I mean, we got to go deeper than that on this conversation. It's like,
Yes.
let's see what happens. So it does, and I think it to a point, it can either reinforce a relationship if
Mhm.
both people embrace it or both people have the awareness of what's going on at the
Mhm.
very least, right?
Yeah.
And understanding.
Mhm.
And so not necessarily that they adopt it, but they just allow you to go through it
Yeah.
and understand that. Or I mean, it can also break relationships because of the gap that's being, you're growing as a human being and improving on all kinds of levels and becoming that better, bigger version of yourself and thriving and dreaming bigger. And all of a sudden the dreams that you both have, like they're
Mhm.
like there's a huge gap like this,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So just the language changes, I think, but it's a very real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of just like my life as an entrepreneur because I've had tons of different businesses and then also different, personal relationships. And sometimes I feel like I've grown apart from people, business
Yeah.
partners, significant others, grown apart. And I feel like I've invested a lot of time in my businesses setting annual goals and 90-day plans and weekly meetings and all of those things to keep alignment and congruency with the team moving the needle forward. And then in my personal life, I wouldn't necessarily implement much structure and think it was supposed to just work.
Yeah. Shooting off the hip.
Exactly. And then I would grow apart from people. And so I feel like integrating the vision, what like the personal vision and the business vision with the people, family, business, and team can help to align everybody so you don't grow apart. But at the same time, everybody has to buy in and
Yeah.
want to be on the bus. So with your teams, how do you measure or decide if the person is on the bus and they're in it with you or if they're not?
This is a really good question. So first off, I have to, understanding that I'm at the head of the bus, right?
Mhm.
I'm driving that thing. It's right butts in the right seats and all that. So when it comes to operations, is one thing. We have to be smart about that portion. I I also see my businesses as a vehicle. For me,
Mhm.
they're a vehicle. So
Mhm.
they're not. I don't go business first and then lifestyle second. I
Mhm.
think about now I do it that way.
Yeah.
So I think about the lifestyle, what do I want in terms of time, what do I want in terms of revenue, what do I want, and
Yeah.
then I'll build a business to match that, right? Operations, systems, staffing, scaling, tapping into different markets, whatever that looks like.
Yes.
So, but it's all gonna reinforce my initial desire of the life that I want to live. Because
Yeah.
now I understand that if I'm not in alignment with that lifestyle, with that life, right, where I have my time freedom, I can enjoy my hikes and you do whatever I want. You know what I mean? Work it that
Yeah.
way. I'm gonna be able to run it, nuts and
Yeah.
bolts, but my heart's not gonna be in it.
Right.
And that creates a problem for everybody.
Right.
So I go my own personal lifestyle, my truth, my vision, right? And then my vehicle is the business. So
Yes.
when people are hopping on, I mean, I look for, especially like during hiring and then bringing somebody into the team, I look for somebody who's hungry, somebody who's coachable, and somebody who's a cultural fit. So three
Mhm.
things that I'm looking at.
Mhm.
The skill set and all that stuff. I mean, it's if they're coachable, we're gonna be able to train them. If they're a cultural fit, like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm gonna train them and then be able to be good and hang out in good vibes and the business and come to rational solutions
Yeah.
whenever issues arise. Now that's one of the things that I do now to make sure, and my business is a vehicle for their vision. Like it's
Mhm.
I understand it 1,000%. They don't work for me. They work for themselves. They just happen to be in my vehicle. That's all.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I do on a regular basis is I used to do top threes. So what are your top three personal priorities, right? Like what do you want to do? Top three things that you're dreaming about now that you want to accomplish.
Mhm.
But the team started growing, so now we just keep it a top one for the sake of effectiveness and time. But we'll talk about that during operations meetings. I have an operations meeting every Tuesday and then daily huddles. And hey, how are you doing on your top priority? And
Yeah.
then this is a personal priority. For example, one of my employees wanted to buy a house, and then she was putting money together for that kind of stuff. So it kind of becomes this group effort. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
heck yeah, you're doing really good. You were able to stack another 5K to for down payment or whatever that is.
Yeah.
But it becomes a collective, right? Like motivation point, and more, I think more importantly, a reminder that they're not working for me or the business, they're working for themselves, and they're just using the business as a vehicle to get there. And I think that creates ownership too,
Yeah.
as far as like their results, the way that they operate. Now they're not doing it for me, clocking in, clocking out. Like they're doing it for themselves, right? So that's my take on that.
I feel like too, like employees that have the mindset that they're somewhat of an entrepreneur too, because they're having to go find a business owner, sell them on hiring them, hire them, and then deliver a result
Yeah.
to the business owner. Otherwise, they get fired.
Right.
And sometimes that mentality isn't there. It's almost like the employee mentality is to show up and just clock in, clock out, get the paycheck.
Right.
But the reality of what they're actually doing is entrepreneurship. They're being an entrepreneur inside of somebody else's umbrella. And
Entrepreneur,
entrepreneur. The leader, like you're choosing the bus to get on. Like, do you like how this driver is driving the bus? Do you like where the bus is going?
Right.
Do you want to be sitting next to your bus mate? Like, does that all resonate with you? And if it doesn't, then to your point, if they're not hungry, it's not a cultural fit. And I can't remember the last one. It's not aligned. Coachable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I guess it's three attributes, and you end up with like a specific type of team, and I'm pretty, when it comes to bringing people on board, and I don't micromanage, I don't do any of that stuff, right? Because I like my time. In my head, it's like, this is the opportunity. We have all the SOPs, all the steps and everything. We have continuous training, conversations. I'm reachable. There's a problem, like fix it, right? Like there's a way to fix it. And I'm vested in this process for the sake of the team as well. And I think like what's happened multiple times is they start working on their own stuff. For example, one of my top guys over the last several years, he was a civil engineer too. So he came into my company as director of operations, and he was just afraid to launch his own business, his own LLC, and his engineering business. I was like, no, let's have a strategy session. Let's figure this out. Like, what do you need to do? So anyways, like fast forward 6 months, he launches. Fast forward another 6 months, he was like, hey, my engineering business is taking off. So I'm gonna have to put in my 2-week notice. And it's like, man, stuff like that. So you'll lose some good people along the way, but that's because they're scaling, they're stepping up into their own zone of genius. And that to me goes back to the empowerment of entrepreneurship. It was like, shit, man, at the end of the day, I'm still serving and I'm still, in alignment with purpose. I just got to find somebody else who can come in and then fill that gap and then just do it all over again. Yeah. So.
I'm curious. So as the bus driver, like, how do you hedge against shiny penny syndrome?
Oh my God. I get distracted all the time. All the time. But I do have, I mean, I have checklists of stuff that I do. I think one of the things, Stacy, that just kind of keeps me centered is the thought of counterbalance. I counterbalance when I'm going super heavy at work. I got to find something to counterbalance on the personal side. Yeah. So if I'm like super heavy on work and I have a ton of stuff and I'm exhausted and, the law of diminishing results start to kick in and whatnot, I disconnect, I go down to the beach and then, take a day or two and then come back refreshed, right? Like that's a counterbalance move and it helps me move forward. Also, it does put things in perspective. I used to get just honed in on, man, this is the emergency that's happening right now. And I have to put this out or I have to jump on this because it's going to go, it's going to explode. But, most things don't happen that way. No. So sometimes, like if I don't have a solution for it, I'll let it sit for a little bit. I'll sit with the idea. Yeah. Now, if I have something that's great before pulling the trigger on something and shooting from the hip, like, that's my MO. That's what I really want to do 100% of the time. I'll sit with something for 3 days. So I'll sit if it's an idea, I'll sit with it for 3 days and see if it still sounds like a great idea 3 days afterwards. Yeah. Surprisingly though, most of the time I was like, no, I don't think it's the time for that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it helps me, just kind of stay the course. Yeah. And when it comes to problems and issues, it's prioritizing. It's okay. What's going back to that ultimate vision of the life that I want? And does it serve me or does it not serve me?
Mm-hmm.
If it is it something that I have to do, or is it something that I need to empower my team to take over and solve that and have some
Mm-hmm.
accountability on that space.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes now I find myself in a really cool role in my businesses, because I'm the coaching capacity. It's
Yeah.
really what I'm doing. But my highest and best, I keep thinking about my highest and best.
Mm-hmm.
What's my highest and best on everything, right? And it's building SOPs, so the standard operating procedures, and then coaching my team through
Yeah.
that stuff. Because if I
Mm-hmm.
go through that once, I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
we can duplicate it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to do it 50 other times
Right.
when it happens. So it's a combination of all those things that just kind of allow me to stay on track. And then something shiny happens, I shelf it.
Yeah.
Just put it aside for a little bit.
I'm impressed you can self-regulate like that. Most visionary leaders have an integrator who tells them no, because it's hard to self-regulate shiny penny syndrome.
Yeah, no, I mean, I sit with myself and just tell myself to not be an idiot. Like, this is all right. It's not the time for this, bro. Like, write it down. I journal a lot.
Yeah.
So for people listening, if you're not journaling, I urge you to begin today. I mean, putting your ideas. There's something about pen and paper that just it clarifies your thoughts. Right. One of the things you have to line up your thoughts in order to write them down. I mean, that's part of the process that's happening subconsciously, but you get some clarity. And when you see it on paper, it's like, man, okay, like it doesn't look like a great idea. It sounded great, but it doesn't look like a great idea anymore. So I think I mean, for me, it works and it creates a lot of clarity.
Yeah,
So,
I'm a huge journaler. I have been journaling since 1998. My grandma got me my first journal ever. I still have it.
wow.
And I have hundreds of journals, and I'll go through like a journal a week. I write so much. Because
Wow.
to your point, when I have different prompts that I do, but it forces you to self-evaluate and reflect and
Yeah.
see how your choices are impacting your nervous system, how they're impacting your bank account, how they're impacting
Yeah.
your relationships, how they're impacting your lifestyle. A recent thing that I just uncovered about my brain, that I was like, wow, I didn't know I formed this. But there's this saying that you always know your fastest path to cash.
Hmm.
And I believe that that's critical for a business. A business needs to know their fastest path to cash. But when you're inventing a business, or you're self-evaluating and reflecting, I'm like, a better self-question is, what's my fastest path to the lifestyle I want?
Yeah.
Because
Love that.
to your point, like, we're human beings that are doing.
Yeah.
And if we don't know what lifestyle we want, we can't be. And then what we do is incongruent. And then we wake up in a life that we're like, this is not what I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. We can be the victim of just the stuff that presents in front of us.
Yeah.
I can safely say that I operated like that for until my burnout session there,
Yeah.
in the mid 20s. Yeah, it was around 27, I think, when that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's because I wasn't really planning the moves ahead. I was like, really, I became a firefighter because, and I think it's one of the biggest blessings, right? But I was at this party, and everybody at the table left, and I was sitting next to this other dude that I didn't know. So I strike up a conversation, like, "Oh, nice party, huh? Yeah, like weather's nice, yeah." So we started, small talk, and I was like, "What do you do?" They're like, "Oh, I'm a fire chief." Really? What do you need to become a firefighter? And then I just started getting, like, that Wednesday. I went, did a walk through the fire station, and then 2 weeks later, I was at the fire academy. So, like, that's how quickly the thing moved. But it wasn't something that was. I mean, it was. I asked about it. It seemed like a good idea, and then okay, let's jump into this.
Yeah.
But I think about that moment, and like, it's scary to know that I could have just missed it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. The sliding doors.
yeah, yep,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. I sometimes look back at my life and see the crossroads.
yeah,
And I'm like, sometimes I'm really happy I chose the road I chose. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I wonder what would have happened had I chose this other road. But
yeah.
it is what it is. I'm curious, what's your definition of success?
Owning my options.
Hmm.
to me, it's always a sliding scale, right? It's not monetary. It used to be monetary. I mean, I thought that's what it was, but it's owning my options. I want to own the ability to do what I want when I want, right? And then, I mean, it really comes back to that level of freedom. So if I build a business that doesn't give me that freedom, it's, you know, to me, it doesn't factor in. So yeah, but operating from that space, and I think also, I mean, this is a kind of like a, it's not a secondary thing. I mean, it goes well hand in hand with it, but it's that empowerment and contribution, right? At the end of the day, you know, the mall was going to be a riskier, you know, somehow, some way. Now I understand it though from a different perspective, and I think it's a more lasting effect when empowerment, true empowerment happens, as opposed to me coming in and then fixing all the leaks in the plumbing per se.
Yeah, and I think
So
also when you empower, you remove resentment.
yeah, absolutely. And this really cool thing happens too. Like when you empower, like it always comes back.
Yeah.
It does. It comes back. You know, I've spent a lot of time with people that actually take it and run whatever advice, whatever the conversation is, and then fast forward a few months, and then we're doing business together, and it's monetizing somehow, and it's just new opportunities. And I mean, it comes back to you because you're being a good human. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's energy, I think.
Yes. I was just saying to someone else the other day, I said, I think in some time in the future, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to happen or if it's already happening, but I think energy is going to be a currency.
That's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought of that.
I don't know how
Yeah.
it would work, but I just
Yeah.
feel like, because we exchange all the time, but we use
Yeah.
money or we barter, but
Yeah.
they always say your vibe attracts your tribe, and you know, there's different sayings.
Yeah.
And we like to be around people who are high energy, who are optimistic, who are going places in their life.
Yeah.
And
We
so
want the
I'm,
room to feel better.
yeah, yeah, like up level and
Yeah.
transcend to a more of a creative space.
Right.
Yeah. Looking back on some of your business and life choices, which choices that you made have you been most inspired by?
I haven't thought about that. So my choices that have inspired me, and I just kind of patted myself on the back for it.
Yeah, like you look back and say, thank God Rafael made that choice. Had he not made that choice, this wouldn't
Take.
be. Yeah.
Oh, I got an answer. It's
Yeah.
like this is, and it's not a. It may sound cliche, but it's really not. It's owning my responsibility, owning my results, taking responsibility for everything that happens in my life, everything, from the good stuff to the bad stuff. You know, understanding that everything comes down to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something happened bad at work, a deal didn't close. I'm not pointing fingers. Every time
Mm-hmm.
I point, I used to try and find blame. Like it didn't work because of this, and it didn't
Mm-hmm.
work because of the market. It didn't work because of, you know, whatever. And and I realized that as I'm doing that, I'm surrendering the energy. I'm surrendering the power, the personal power that comes along with any decision that we make, right?
Yeah.
Because now it's like, man, it's not up to me, so I can't fix it.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there just kind of waiting on something to fall from the sky and fix stuff.
Yeah.
But when I had that mind shift and started seeing everything as that, it's like a newfound superpower. It truly is. It's like everything comes down to us. There's always something that we can come in or come up with, reach out to somebody else for help, you name it, right? But when we have that sense of responsibility over every single one of our results, every single thing that happens to us, we take that personal power back. So
This is so interesting because your thing that you're most inspired by is that you took extreme ownership,
yeah,
and the thing that is success to you is owning your option.
yeah.
And you could only get there because of extreme ownership. So that's very cool.
I like how you put that, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah, you're doing it. What projects are you working on right now that you're most excited about?
Work wise, we're doing expansion. We're expanding throughout the country, different markets, which is really cool. So it's a new level of discipline. It's a new level of training and empowering the team and all that stuff. So I like challenges like that. And I'm also growing the coaching. I'm rolling out a couple of different things on the coaching side for real estate investors. And I mean, I'm excited overall about like everything that's coming through. And I think I'm not doing anything different in terms of the structure of the overall business and what I'm doing in my personal life. I'm just doing things bigger. And that think got bigger, I feel like, this year because of the possibilities and stuff. So yeah, it's a really cool stage.
Did more collaborations emerge for you?
Yeah. So recently, I'm part of a few masterminds. One of them is the family mastermind, but I was invited to be part of the advisory board, which is the commission, right? And I mean, it's a really cool mastermind. We have a couple of meetings in Tampa, but there's like big key players, people that I look up to, people whose books I've been reading for years. And they just happen to be part of that mastermind. And with this, like, for example, this new opportunity or the ability to be part of that, I'm like smack down in the center of it. So it's like I get to connect with a lot more power players. It's just a bigger table, and that's an important role. So that to me is exciting because I know that ripple effects there are going to have their own baby ripple effects everywhere.
Yeah. It's like a momentum builder.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So there's a lot of fun stuff happening. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation, and I really see the journey you've gone on, like the pursuit of growth, then enduring burnout, which usually ignites a dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
You rebirth yourself, and then you go on to build something that really is congruent so you can own your options. And so you're almost living your success. Enjoying
one day at a time, work in progress, right?
Yes, I love it. Where can people find you?
I'm pretty active on social. So Instagram is, DMs and all that stuff, at Rafael Cortez, CEO. Yeah. And then I do have a podcast on YouTube. Drop a lot of episodes there on mindset and entrepreneurship. And that's Rafael Cortez, CEO as well.
Yes. So. Well, I don't know why you would not want to go follow him and check out everything that he's doing, because he is definitely why we're doing Rooted Founders. How do you stay rooted while you get shit done? So I hope this episode encourages you and empowers entrepreneurs to stay rooted and get shit done. So thanks, y'all. Thank you, Rafael.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.